Hey Goblins, Brandon here. Thanks for coming back for this episode of the Goblins and Growlers podcast. Just a heads up, Gabe and I did record a review of episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Legend of Vox Machina. Since this is a regular release week for us, we figured we'd put out the regular episode on Monday, and then the Vox Machina review is going to come out tomorrow on Tuesday morning. So keep an ear out for that. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Goblins and Growlers podcast. I'm Josh Maltby at Black Cloak DM on Twitter.
Hey, I'm Brandon Dingus at Way of Brandalore on Twitter. Josh, what do we got going today? Do we have a guest again?
You know, it's weird. It's almost like he hasn't left the room yet, and we were going to record another episode, and then we were like, do you want to record another episode? And he was like, could we record another episode? And then we said, yes, we could record another episode.
I just had to wait in the room for 24 hours first. It's been 84 years.
It's been 1 week since.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Noah.
Hey,
Introduce yourself again.
Hi, my name's Noah. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a cool lawyer. And I'm not talking about legal stuff today, so I don't need to do a disclaimer.
Fantastic.
Yay!
I'm talking about illegal stuff. No.
Yeah. Now, all the podcast information we're going to give people today is strictly for informational purposes.
Yeah.
If you're trying to start your own podcast, please consult a professional podcaster.
None of which is us. Are we professional podcasters?
We don't have sponsorships.
That's fair.
But we do.
Yeah.
But we do have Patreon. So we are being paid for the work we're doing. I don't know. I think we might be professional podcasters, Brandon.
You know what?
Okay, I'll add that to my LinkedIn.
Yeah, professional podcaster.
You know, I will say we talk a big joke about like, oh, the legal disclaimer before talking about podcasting, but I do feel like people should realize a little more often that like when you're getting advice from something like a podcast or a panel you go to or something like that, they're talking about their experiences and history. They can't speak to exactly what you're experiencing and doing.
I felt like that when I was teaching journalism at VCU. I was like,
wait, you taught journalism at VCU?
Yeah, I taught. I was an adjunct there for like 6 semesters.
Holy crap!
Yeah,
that's neat.
Yeah, it was part-time when I was working at the paper.
What years was that?
2016 through 2019, I think.
I technically could have had you as a professor then, my friend. I'm still enrolled at VCU.
No, it was really interesting. It was actually the thing that got me over my fear of talking in front of groups. So
wow, cool.
It's because of that I can do public speaking. I was actually talking to somebody at work the other day just about public speaking. They're like, "Oh man, it terrifies me." I was like, you know, after having to capture and keep the attention of a bunch of 20-year-olds, I can speak in front of a room of 1,000 people now and not feel weird about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about having fun. And just for the podcast listening audience, I am 31 years old. I'm not like college age. And so
I'm 40 years old, so I'm definitely not college age.
Yeah, you're old, man. It's cool.
Yeah. It's fine. I got my Reed Richards hair going with the gray. It's
nice.
It's fantastic. But yeah, so Noah's back this episode, and we thought we would just kind of like shoot the shit a little bit. He wants to talk about his podcast, Forgotten Paths, available on Spotify. You can get him at My Lawyer Friend on Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok.
Yeah, boy.
So yeah, we're just gonna sort of hang out, talk about his podcast, talk about actual play podcasting in general, because Josh and I are on Quid Pro Roll, our sister actual play podcast. Please like, follow, subscribe, retweet. We're available wherever podcasts are.
Or if you're here from Quid Pro Roll, go back and listen to it again.
Yeah, we could really use the download boosts. That would be amazing.
We don't care if you listen. Just download.
Yeah. Well, let's start off. No, go ahead, Josh.
What I was going to say was we are also specifically going to talk about Amnesia Campaigns, which is what Forgotten Paths is as a show.
Yeah, which I'm really excited to talk about. It's something I was telling the two of you before we hopped on. Amnesia Campaigns have quickly become one of my favorite ways to introduce new players to D&D and new listeners to D&D. So we'll dive into that because I'm very passionate about it.
So real quick, Noah, what is an Amnesia campaign and why should I run one?
Yeah, so Amnesia campaigns typically take the form of uh, players come in and they don't know who they are, where they are, or how they got there, and they don't know a ton of stuff about their character. It's a sliding scale. You can have a true Amnesia campaign where they wake up and the characters don't know anything. They don't know language. They can like that kind of stuff, which is insane. Now, I don't recommend doing that. Or you can take it like the middle of the road where the characters wake up and they know generally like an apple's an apple, a kobold's a kobold, that kind of thing, but they don't know anything about themselves. Or you can take it to like a Amnesia light of they have their characters that they've built and brought to the table, but they don't know why they got to where they are or what's happened before the start time, and they're trying to figure it out. When I'm running with new players, my favorite kind of way to start it is to actually start with blank character sheets, and the players figure out everything about their character as they go along. They figure out, and that's a great way for me to use to teach new players how to use ability rolls and how to use health and skills.
Let me stop you right there. When you say you're going with a blank character sheet, are you saying like even the ability scores are blank? And if somebody's like, I want to try and break down this door, you're like, all right, roll 3d6 and we'll determine what your strength score is.
No, so you can do it that way. That's the great thing about Amnesia campaigns. You know, you can be so versatile. It's limited only by your imagination. It's the Amnesia campaigns really actually lend themselves to surreal campaigns too. But no. So on the Forgotten Pats podcast, for example, I had experienced players, so I gave them their their ability scores and modifiers and their basic skill stuff. For my home campaign, which I run with a bunch of friends here between Richmond and Baltimore, they started off with truly blank character sheets. I didn't say, if they said, I want to break down this door, I didn't say, okay, roll 3d6 or here's your point buy, figure it out. What I did was I said, okay, roll. And they did. And I say, you succeed. And you find out that your strength modifier is +3. And then they fill in their character sheet, that kind of thing.
Now, with regard to that, did you already have that figured out beforehand, or were you like, oh, he rolled an 18, I guess he's good at strength?
Oh, yeah, no. So I have all of that figured out beforehand in the campaigns that I run.
I think that would be amazing, though, if like you're like, I'm going to break down this door, and then you discover upon the failed roll that your character actually has osteoporosis or something.
Oh, no.
I've played in a campaign where the GM never thought we were going to end up taking a sailing vessel onto the ocean. And so he was like, well, you know what? I hadn't planned anything for this. Let's everybody roll D100. And the goal was to get as low as possible.
Like golf.
And for those of us that got higher numbers, he was like, yeah, not only have you never been on a ship before, but you are so nauseous right now.
Oh, wow. That's
you are
so
all
cool.
desert dwellers who never saw the ocean before now.
That is so neat.
You're from Athos, actually.
I love that. Yeah, no, I what I do for all of mine is I create the characters within certain parameters. If somebody says, I'd really like to try a rogue out this time, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll make you a rogue. But when I've got a new player, they've never touched D&D before, they say, I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, all right, you're going to be something crazy. It's going to be a Echo Knight Kobold. So
let's get weird.
Let's get weird, man. But yeah, then they figure it out as they go along. And once you get past the initial, filling out the character sheet, which you'll do over the course of 4 sessions, maybe you find an NPC that reveals a lot more for them, that kind of thing. They go to a library, find a lineage, that kind of stuff. Then you start to figure out more about their history, their forgotten affiliations. Oh, was I the leader of an underground gang or something like that? It's really fun to throw in revelations.
I want to tie this back into Star Trek because that's what I do with most things in my life.
Or wrestling. You tie in with wrestling too.
Yeah, before wrestling there was Star Trek, but there's a fantastic bottle episode of Next Generation called Conundrum, and it's basically an Amnesia campaign.
Oh, wow.
Everybody gets knocked out. And like the episode pretty much begins with everybody having lost their memory, and they have no idea. Like they've even lost knowledge of like what the rank insignias mean, so they don't know who the captain is and they have to figure it out. And it leads to some really interesting character interactions, knowing, like, as the viewer, knowing what you know about the character dynamics.
Wow.
Even like it's just a fascinating episode to watch. I think sort of at this point, most people are sort of at least broadly familiar with the characters on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah.
So it's, even if you're not like a super fan, it's really worth checking out.
What's the name of the episode? Do you know?
Conundrum.
Okay, Conundrum. Okay.
Mhm.
On TNG, I'm gonna check that out. That's
Yeah.
there's your homework for the episode. Go and watch Star
Yeah.
Trek: The Next Generation Conundrum.
Watch Star Trek: The Next Generation Conundrum, and then write your
Mhm.
own Amnesia campaign.
Yeah, it's season 5, episode 14.
Awesome, love
Yeah.
it. I'm gonna have to do that like after this podcast. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It was the last episode of TNG that I had never seen. I never saw it during its initial run, and I had seen every one of them but that one, and then I finally caught it on a syndication rerun at some point.
That's so neat.
What a one to miss. Jeez.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you guys this: in terms of Amnesia campaigns, like what's y'all's backgrounds with them? Because it's something that I dove into pretty hardcore. It's almost one of my favorite plays to play D&D. What about you guys?
So I've had amnesiac characters in campaigns I've run before. I've had characters, everything from, I don't recall the player had written down the ability scores and all of that, but played the character as not knowing their strength, not knowing how quick they are, not knowing if they can pick locks or not. And then the player would roll, and sometimes it would go absolutely horribly, and the character would be like, well, I don't know if I can do this because it went really badly for me, even though they have a +4 dex and thieves tools and all.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. I've also had player characters sit down at my table that are like, I don't know what my backstory is, and I don't want to make one up, so I'm going to leave all of that in your hands. My character knows nothing of his past. And I'm like, it's a little edgy, but that's fine. I'll work with you on that. We'll do this.
Huh.
I kind of did a middle of the road thing one time. I was hired to write like a 7 or 8 hour game to run for folks. So I spent a lot of time on it, and I wanted to do something a little bit different with it, other than just like, well, here's the adventure, bring your characters and let's go. So everybody created their own character ahead of time. But when I got there, I had created a big table for everybody to roll on to determine character relationships.
Yeah.
So, I go around the table. Okay, you roll, because there were 6 people playing, like roll a D6 and then roll a D12 to determine what your relationship is with that person around the table. And like, oh, okay, so your character actually used to date that character's sister, but you broke up with the sister, but you actually ended up remaining pretty good friends with the brother.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff like that. It made it really interesting. I think they enjoyed it. Some of the stuff didn't like gel perfectly, but it was it made for some really cool interactions. So I would 10/10 would do again.
That's awesome. One of my favorite parts about Amnesia campaigns is if they go for long enough, you can really dive into some like I would say hard hitting. I wouldn't say hard hitting necessarily, because it's not like, oh man, I'm gonna be sobbing at the table, but like stuff that can really have an impact on your characters. For example, in my homebrew homeworld campaign that I run as an Amnesia campaign, we're about 80 sessions into it. We've been running it for a year and a half, almost 2 year and 3/4. And I have one character named Burgess. Burgess, the dwarf that doesn't believe that dwarves exist, rogue. And he got teleported to another universe, played by my good friend Alex Medeiros, by the way. Teleported to another universe where he found out that he had a family that he just didn't remember. He had a wife and kids that he didn't remember. And the impact that having that allowed me to kind of bring his character, which had turned into sort of a murder hobo, back in line with this person's got something to live for. They can't just dive in and try and murder everything.
Does this guy look like Georgios Tsoukalos?
I don't know who that is. I know
he's the aliens guy from Ancient Aliens.
Oh yeah, no, he doesn't. He doesn't. No. Actually, Alex amazingly looks like Brendan Urie, like a Brendan Urie clone. So But yeah,
Lucky
no. So
bastard.
you like you bastard. But yeah, no. So the amnesia campaigns allow for revelations because you're not going to know stuff from your backstory, allows you to make connections and stuff like that. Have some really cool moments.
Well, and that doesn't close the door. I think part of the beauty of having an amnesiac character or campaign is it doesn't close the door to the player having that agency to kind of like bring ideas and concepts to the table
Exactly.
without having the pressure of, oh, if I'm going to write, these 3 things I want to have happen, I also have to write the 7 other things that make sense to connect them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and it allows them to really it gives them some bumpers within which to put their creativity because unlimited creativity can stifle creativity in some cases. If you are given obstacles to play within, then you one find a way to overcome them, and two, okay, here's the wall, I can paint on it, that kind of thing. Which I've really enjoyed playing in all of my campaigns. In Forgotten Paths, for example, we had 3 main characters. They woke up with nothing. We just recorded episodes 6 and 7, which are their first memories, where they remember a little bit about actual things that happened in their past. And seeing the players processing that and has been absolutely fun. We're about to record episodes 8 and 9. And I just want to see how it affects their characters and see the shift in their characters. You know what I mean?
I don't want this to sound like the way it's going to sound, but like that reminds me a lot about sort of the end of the Adventure Zone balance arc.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not suggesting that was ripped off. It just
It
reminds
wasn't.
me.
Yeah, because if what was that? That was the McElroy brothers, obviously.
Yeah.
But in terms of what happened with their characters, it was like the
They
century.
Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't listened to all of the balance arc, because I actually know
Yeah.
one person who is currently like listening to it right now.
Yeah.
Fast
ahead.
forward like a minute or two.
Yeah.
But they were actually from like another universe or something.
Right, or a multitude of universes.
Yeah. They kept traveling between universes to escape this sort of Galactus type situation.
That's cool. Yeah, that's not in my campaign, but that's really neat.
Well, now you've spoiled something for your players.
Oh, maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm lying.
So when you were first building out Forgotten Paths, obviously you came up with a lot of like what the characters were going to be, how they were going to perform their roles. I imagine the players had a lot of trust in you, but how much do you bring players in on that process, or did you at all?
Um, with Forgotten Paths specifically, I really didn't bring them in. They didn't know anything going in. I would give them hints. The most that I gave them was as I'm creating characters for Amnesia Campaigns, in order to make sure that I'm not just writing clones, like 3 clones that are the exact same thing, I create a playlist of 3 songs for each character. Um, Songs that I emotionally connect with that will inspire something in me. It's how I create characters for Amnesia Campaigns across the board. And once I created the character, I didn't share the character sheet with my players, but I shared the playlist with them. Because when you're recording a podcast, it when you're offline, it's one thing to have hijinks around the table for 4 hours. Like, holy crap, I'm a dwarf. But within a podcast, you're not just recording for yourselves, you're recording for an audience. So I wanted to give them some bumpers to kind of guide them along. So it helped inform their initial character choices, I believe. That was the intent, at least. And it gave them a world within which to live. That said, when I was creating it, they had no idea what they were diving into. And if you listen to the first episode, they're like one of the characters. I won't spoil which one. One of the characters is shorter than another, and they played into it perfectly. They figured it out halfway through. And it was a really exciting moment because it gave them some cool character choices to make.
I don't know if you've done this already, but is there somewhere we can go and see the song choices for the characters, or is that something you're
Oh.
saving for social media release later?
We have not done that, but I actually would love to do that. In fact, I'm happy to tell you. on the podcast right now because I have it right here. So one character was had in their playlist "Days Like These" by Low, "Jonathan" by Hail Mary Mallon, and "Sirens" by Bear Ghost. Another one had "Midnight" by Caravan Palace, "Use My Voice" by Evanescence, and "Blood Water" by Grandson. And the third one was "Plume" by Caravan Palace, "Stronger Than You" featuring Estelle by Steven Universe, or from Steven Universe, I should say. Amazing show. And "Seven" from Taylor Swift. And and it's such an eclectic group of songs that it helped them really make character choices, I believe. And they filled it up perfectly.
You want to know Alex's playlist for my character on Quid Pro Roll?
Please.
It was John Cena's entrance theme.
Of course it was.
It was Dusty Rhodes' The American Dream entrance theme, Common Man Boogie, and badass Billy Gunn's entrance theme from the mid 90s when his character was Mr. Ass, called Ass Man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it fits your character so perfectly from Quid Pro Roll.
She just rolled her eyes like she was like, send me some ideas for some songs. I was like, well, wrestling themes.
Wrestling themes.
Yeah.
I'm one of those weirdos who makes an entire playlist for his character. So I have 18 tracks, but the top 3 for Solinar are Gold Guns Girls by Metric, Cha-Ching by Stairlift, and Dead of Night by Daniel Olson. Who's the singer on that? I'd have to look.
I love that because you connect so emotionally to music.
Oh yeah,
that it helps you build an emotional connection to your character, and that's my opinion. Like as a writer for D&D, I have a D&D playlist that is really long, and when I'm writing, I just put it on, and it's got everything from epic stuff to sad stuff to sea shanties, and that way when I'm writing, I make sure to, if something strikes a chord, I'll just click put on repeat, and I'll just write an entire section listening to that song. Like that's how I wrote a pretty significant character death in my homebrew campaign, was listening to Bones in the Ocean by The Longest Johns. So great track. And then I used it in the scene.
That's the way to do it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad that sea shanties made just such a massive revival. Like that, what a good thing to come back.
Right? I agree. And then Nickelback did a sea shanty collaboration.
I was completely unaware of this. That sounds amazing though.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. You should go check it out. Nickelback did, I think it was Rockstar. They just did a sea shanty collab for it.
Wow.
Yep. But yeah, no, so Amnesia Campaigns, you got to find ways to help your characters with their character, and music's a great way to do it. Art's a great way to do it, that kind of stuff. One of my homebrew campaign characters is currently undergoing in like a transformation. They just found out something about themselves. And this is like a year and a half in. And they just found out something transformative about themselves. So I gave them some music to help guide them on it. And it's just Russian rap. Like Russian all female rap by Apache. The song is Witch by Apache. It's really great.
I once fell in love with a song. This was about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was it sampled Cyan's theme from Final Fantasy VI. So that's why I was really all about it. And it was Korean. And then many years later, I found out that the rappers were actually like super hardcore conservative, like religious conservative Koreans.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Cause like I didn't understand half the words in the song. But I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is bop. And then I found out like what they believed. I was like, oh no, God, I feel so dirty. Be very careful. Be very careful falling in love with songs not in a language you understand.
Yeah, always look up the translation to make sure they're not just like rapping Mein Kampf or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. You want to be cautious of that. So Noah, you talk about like players who are new to the game, bringing them in and having them play an Amnesia campaign. How do you balance the fact that they don't know any of the rules with the fact that you are basically in complete control of what their character is capable of?
Yeah, yeah. So, what I use it as is more of a. It gives me an ability to guide them so that they don't read ahead in the rule book. You know what I mean? One of the things that I struggled with as an early player, even when I was really learning D&D in 3.5. I've been around since AD&D, but I really didn't dive in until 3.5. Um, was that I would get 4 steps ahead without learning the basics. I would, create that spell thief, and I would be like, "All right, I got spells," and I didn't learn what spell slots were or like anything like that. And it was a mistake. And so it's really important, I think, for new players to learn how the math interacts, how the character sheet goes, and what plugs in where. Because at first it can look like, oh, there's all these randomly generated numbers on a page, but actually most of it is your 6 ability scores, your health, and then a bunch of set stuff that plugs into your set bonuses and your racial traits. And so when I'm working with a new player and I say, okay, I need you to roll a perception check, they say, well, what the perception check? I'm like, okay, now when I tell you to roll a check, you're going to be looking at your saving throw. Well, your saving throws are your skill checks, or if you don't see anything there, you're just looking straight up at your abilities. And that's where you find your modifiers. So if you look next to your perception, you have your what is the modifier for perception? I got a sheet here.
Perception
Is
is 10 plus your wisdom modifier.
Yeah. So it's yeah. So what I'll say is take your wisdom modifier, and they're like, what's my wisdom modifier? I'm like, okay, your wisdom modifier is 2. Your proficiency bonus, if you're proficient in perception, is also +2 because you're a level 1. So your perception modifier would be +4. And they're like, oh, dope! I've learned how to play D&D. And then I'll tell them roll a d20, and then you got your basics of how that final number that they hear, like I rolled a 24. Well, that's great. That means they rolled a natural 20. I can teach them about that too. They learn what goes into the final number that people yell out by reconstructing it from their character sheet.
I think one of the greatest pieces of media on this I've seen is a web comic that shows these two parents talking, and one of them's like, "Your son always gets such good scores in math. Like, you all must do such a good job at home." And she's like, "Yeah." And then underneath it shows her being like, "Okay, so if your attack modifier is 3 and you rolled a 16, then the armor class is 19."
That's amazing. I love that. You need to send that to me. That's dope.
I will
Yeah.
find that and send that to you.
Yeah, obviously, I would never do that on a podcast medium, in terms of like putting somebody on who's never played before. But for home campaigns, it's a great way to teach your friends how to play D&D. Now, my question for you guys is: have you? I haven't gotten far enough into Quid Pro Roll yet to know. Have you guys played around with Amnesia at all in there, or what have been some of the challenges you guys had recording the podcast of Quid Pro Roll?
So I don't know that we've dealt with amnesia itself as a topic, but we have definitely had making character history decisions minutes before revealing it on the cast.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
My character Gravy Boat has been going through some stuff lately. So Alex is like, I've got some thoughts on what we should do with him, but mainly to help him learn a lesson. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And she's like, do you have any thoughts about what could happen there? And my philosophy usually is like, I don't want any foreknowledge of what's going to happen to my character. And so I really push against that because like that's life. Like you don't know what's
Yeah.
going to happen. So it's a more genuine reaction if you don't. She's like, come on, I need some help here. And I was like, I don't know. He's got some family issues. Maybe you could play with that. He's been he's demonstrated fecundity perhaps in his
Good word.
interactions with women over the last 20 years. So maybe you could play something off from that. And she says, okay, so, maybe I have some kind of idea of his past. And I guess from a certain perspective, I should know more about his past, but also I still want to be surprised by it.
Yeah, because I mean, you're not actively thinking about everything that's ever happened to you at all times.
Right.
and you're not actively thinking about the emotional reaction that you have to it. So one of the things that I see a lot is folks, when they have their backstories, they're saying, okay, I know exactly how this affected me. No, you don't. That's what therapy's for.
Right. You know how you reacted, but
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, oh, and I see backstories where they're like, oh yeah, he had a falling out with his sister and she hated him. Well, how do you know that? Did she say I hate you, or is it something you assumed? Is it, if you run into her down the road, is she still gonna hate you, or does she miss somebody? Like, you can't write that into your own character. You can't decide things for other people. Even if they're NPCs.
That's one of my favorite things to do as a game master, is when people have written in those backstories where they're making big assumptions about the emotions of other characters.
Mm-hmm.
You, as the authority on those characters, then are like, no, I never, no, I never hated you. I was upset because of what you had just done, and I needed time to process that, and you took that as me cutting you out of my life. And then when I came to talk to you, you were gone. And all of a sudden, the player and the character both are like, oh my God.
Oh no.
I've been so wrong this whole time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about characters as a GM is the character sheet is from you need to take it as this is from this person's character's perspective. And looking at the chandelier from a different angle, you could see different crystals and different rainbows. And so I would always challenge GMs to, in a podcast medium and a homebrew campaign, to not take something their players say as fact, because then it allows you to create character growth.
Be aware that all narrators have some form of bias.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. And especially when it comes to an Amnesia campaign, because the narrator is the only way that you know how things actually are, quote unquote. So it's a great way to throw in plot twists and things like that.
So we've talked a lot about like setting up an Amnesia campaign, but when you're actually running it, I imagine you have a lot of instances where somebody makes a decision about how their character is going to respond to things. If that's not already written in, do you make changes kind of on the fly? Or are you like, well, you can absolutely be very interested in picking locks, but you do have a -2 dex, so that will be difficult for you.
I mean, it really depends. I mean, what do you think? Like, how have you handled that kind of stuff?
I mean, Brandon and I both tend to be very fly by night sort of DMs.
Yeah.
I
Improv
tend to
GMs,
run.
as I like to say.
Yes, indeed. I tend to run a lot of my stuff. Everything I have written down is merely a suggestion. All can change.
As opposed to Alon, who writes nothing down.
Yeah,
Alon just runs off of nothing.
I was recently in an Alon campaign for charity, and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. I enjoy doing that kind of stuff for one shots. I cannot do it for long form.
That is Alon's strength.
Yeah,
is one shots.
My particular mania does not allow me to walk into a situation with that kind of lack of a plan.
Yeah,
I can come in with a plan and the plan can change, but I cannot just walk into it just like, all right, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it. I've seen other people do it. The thing is you got to be a really strong DM to do it, because I remember I was playing a campaign one time, and somebody was like on the fly. They were trying to like just come up with something, and I saw that they had like a moment of inspiration, but they were a little drunk. As a DM, which is a bad idea sometimes. Mm-hmm. And they said something to the effect of, you walk into an orphanage where there's just a bunch of blind orphans. I'm like, okay. And I was like, I do a perception check, and I rolled a nat 20, and I said, you see a sign on the wall that says not see youth. I was like, oh no.
That's awful.
It was rough. And that campaign died right after that.
No surprise.
Yeah, because of bad puns. Bad puns that were grounded in historical awfulness.
Well, and also like you created a terrible scenario to make a pun based on a different terrible scenario. It's like you just really doubled down there, didn't you?
Oh my
It's funny
God.
because I mean, at the moment I chuckled. I was like, "Oh no!" But yeah, we couldn't continue on that. So you gotta plan out stuff, and you can't make up stuff like that because as a pun master yourself, Josh, um, you can get in trouble.
Oh, I'm well aware. We've had to cut whole like episodes of the podcast because we went on a pun rampage and it ended up going very inappropriate directions. And that was when we learned that we need someone on the cast to be the straight man
Yeah,
because
which
if
is
all
where
of us are
Brandon comes in.
Yeah.
well I honestly, as crazy as this sounds, it's usually Alan who is trying to like bring us back to center.
What?
I know. I know. But the
I
thing
don't
is,
think I've been the straight man since that episode where I went full dad voice and made everybody in the room uncomfortable.
Oh my god, I'm
uh,
excited for that.
that's magnificent though. Like honestly, of memorable moments on the podcast, that's one of my favorites because you just completely dominated the room with pure dad voice and dad energy. It was
It
amazing.
it was kind of awful, Noah, because like after we finished recording that episode, everybody was like, "I just got to take a breath," because that legit made me uncomfortable. It was like being yelled at by my father.
I felt like I was about to get grounded. Like
And then after the episode comes out, people are on the Discord like, "That was uncomfortable."
That was it
Wow.
was a good uncomfortable though. I loved it.
Yeah,
It was a
that
dramatic uncomfortable.
that's the thing is like I love dramatic uncomfortables. As in a podcast medium, that is something that it can't all be fluffy bunnies. It can't all be super edgelords. It's sometimes got to be a little bit in between. You got to dive into a spot where like as long as everybody is understands the safety tools that you put in place.
Mhm.
Which, if you don't know what safety tools are, I don't know if you guys have recorded a podcast on that, but you should. Um, as long as people follow the safety tools that you have in place, going into an uncomfortable place can show character growth, especially with like an Amnesia campaign. One of the places that we went recently on Forgotten Paths, and this episode's not out yet, um, was uncomfortable for me as a GM and for the player. In terms of not like an actual discomfort, but like it was oh man, where is this gonna go? And it was interesting because it's not something either of us really expected, but we unpacked some serious history for a character um, that they obviously didn't know because it's an Amnesia campaign, and it was at the end of it. We were sitting on Discord just chatting and like unpacking, and we're like, that was really fun. Like it was a really cool moment because we went someplace that we weren't necessarily ready for. And that kind of stuff's important. But so if you haven't listened to the Forgotten Paths podcast, make sure you start now so you're there when it comes out.
So actually talking about the Forgotten Paths podcast, you put together your cast.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of these professionals were like, all right, Noah's not going to do us dirty. He's going to give us characters we're going to enjoy playing. You
Mhm.
gave them their playlists to give them a little bit of something to work off of as they're playing their characters. How much do you have written for the campaign ahead of when you start playing? Because I know the old adage is don't write every scenario because you'll end up using an eighth of it and putting the rest in a drawer.
Yeah, exactly. And actually Alex put this in the best way is you make the tracks while the train is on running. And so with Forgotten Paths, I had potentially, I'd say, the first 10 episodes completely ready to go. I knew here's the format, the scenarios, what I need for exposition, because this gets us through the base exposition. At the end of these 10 episodes, I need everyone to know what the characters' names, races, classes are, and what their third level ability is. for their subclass. I need everybody to know that stuff. So that we have a base on which to build for the rest of the campaign. And that way I can focus on not the mechanics of what they're unpacking, but the actual story after that. So I've got, places that this train is gonna go. But the characters are really helping me inform what's next, where they're emotionally ready, where their characters are building towards what would be a good moment next. So um I'd honestly say if I needed to, if I could just get into a massive multi-day recording session, I could probably get out to like 25 episodes without needing to pause. Um, but those are all options. They're all tinker toys that could snap in a different place. We can build a skyscraper or a parking garage. Um, and it's really fun to see where the characters are leading me as the DM, even as I'm giving them their backstories.
I love this concept of building things out so that you've got your introduction set,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got different set pieces that you can play with beyond that. Because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's really what we should all be aspiring to when we write a campaign for a group of people we're going to be running. Obviously, if you're writing a campaign that you expect other people to run, that a lot of that's going to be up to them.
Yeah.
But when you're writing your own campaign, when I'm trying to write a campaign for myself, I've always aspired to have it set so that I've got some high notes I want to hit, I've got some journeys that I want to go on, and I've got some places that I want to see. But overall, you have to wait and see where your players are going to take you as much as your players are waiting to see where you want to take them.
Right. And my players have done a great job of not waiting on me to fill out their characters. They're making decisions. And what I love about that is with a recorded Amnesia campaign, the audience is going to be able to eventually see and hear, oh, this character, after their memory was wiped, became a completely different person based on this story that we hear about them in the world from before. And that, because I don't want them to become the same person. I mean, that just means predestination is a thing, and as we as GMs know, predestination kills campaigns. So
So with kind of that, you've got your cast. You were saying something about this third episode release.
yeah.
There's kind of a big memory moment for at least one of your characters. I'm trying to remember exactly what you said now.
Yeah, so episode 3 is coming out this Monday. It'll likely be out by the time this episode is coming up. Um, and this is kind of the exposition moment, where people, after a certain point, people have their guesses. After episodes 1 and 2 on Twitter, we're seeing the people are like, "Oh, I think so and so is this class. Oh, I think so and so is this class." Episode 3 is I want to give the audience a moment to say, "Oh, I got that right." You know what I mean? So I've got one character, an NPC coming in that's just going to either confirm or deny. They're going to say at this point, okay, well, this person's a monk. This person's, a warlock, etc. You're one of the best monks that we've ever seen from this temple, that kind of thing. Giving them a little bit so that the audience can be like, I knew it. Okay, this is the path that we're on, kind of thing. And that way we get confirmations, because and the way I see it is, I want the audience to have that moment of, yeah, I checked that box. I know my D&D. And so that's something I want to reward them with. And that's going to be happening all along the way. I want to be able to have the audience, like, I want to see fan theories. I want people to be like, I think that this is in their backstory, or this happened to this person, and I want it to be confirmed or denied. Because if somebody's guessing something online, what if they have a better idea than I had? And then I'll just use that. So that's how I go with it.
I've definitely done that at the table before. I don't know. Actually, I take that back. I do know there's been at least one occasion with Quid Pro Roll where somebody has thrown out I think this is a thing that may have occurred. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I had made no decisions on that yet. And that is so much better than anything I was going to come up with.
Yeah.
There's a story from Seinfeld about that, like the episode where Jerry didn't know his girlfriend's name, but she said that it rhymed with the part of the female anatomy. They had it all written out, like what the name was going to be. And then the warm-up comedian, like during the episode when they were shooting it, was like talking to the studio audience, like, who has guesses on what her name's going to be? And somebody threw out Dolores. It wasn't Larry David, but it was another producer or somebody on the show. Like his ears immediately perked up and he went and he ran backstage. He's like, we got to change it. This is way better. This is way better. And that's what ended up being in the episode that aired.
That's funny because they said Dolores because it rhymes. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Because the way. Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
hilarious. Man, I wonder how they could find her. Anyways, so, do you have to cut that, Brandon?
I think Josh is going to edit this one, actually.
Hopefully, Josh doesn't have to cut that.
I don't think we'll have to cut that one. I think that's very like Looney Tunes-esque, kind of like wink and a nod.
I think you should keep the discussion of whether or not to cut it too. But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at in terms of. I would love to have G&G people on as guests for my for Forgotten Pats too, because you guys are so experienced. So please let me know. I'd love that.
I am available for bookings.
Yay, good.
My fees are very reasonable, and for
Good.
you, they may even go as low as free.
Oh shit. Oh my god. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, in terms of podcast releasing, just kind of in general, as we're winding down here, is for y'all with Quid Pro Roll, what was it like building up your audience? Because we're at that part where, you know, Forgotten Pats, first episode, 200 downloads and listens on like in 2 days, which is awesome. And honestly, I think a lot of that was y'all sharing it, G&G sharing it. So thank you to the listeners of G&G. You know, y'all are great. But in terms of the slow build, how did you guys, like, when did you start to say, okay, this is for real?
The other day.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean, without diving too deep into numbers, you know, Josh knows this because I posted in our private Discord all the time. Like usually every couple of days, I'm like, here's where our numbers are at for this month. And for December and January, we went to a bi-weekly release schedule instead of weekly, just to give everybody a little bit of a break. And I was like, our numbers are going to tank because of this. And we're actually seeing like record downloads these 2 months. And we do it through Podbean. So I use the analytics there where you can do like the max you can do is look over the last 24 months on there. And a real kind of mind-blowing thing for me is like, you know, like COVID in starting in 2020, like nobody knew how to track podcast download metrics anymore. Like nobody knew what they were going to do because there were no commutes anymore.
Right.
So there was no normal. So we hit kind of a nadir after a certain point there. And then I guess like earlier this year, we had our highest, or not this year, because it's 2022 now. Earlier, like around July of 2021, we had our highest download month ever. And then last month, December, actually eclipsed that. So if you take the chart and look at it over 24 months, it's kind of amazing because we see, you know, big, like really around January of last year is where everything started to take off and it just hit sort of an upward trajectory. And that was just over 2 years and 3 months after we started the podcast. And if our total downloads versus the last 12 months, we've gotten fully 50% of our total downloads in the last 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
As far as building our initial audience, though, it started out pretty like quietly, pretty slowly. It's one of those things where we agreed as a group that we weren't going to pay too much attention to download numbers, that we were going to make the podcast for us and then the audience second. Because if you're doing it just for the views, then things get really skewed really fast. Also, it can be really disappointing to wake up every morning, look at your download numbers and be like, oh, only like 5 more people have listened.
Well, exactly.
But the thing is, like, we learned a couple of things. Thing number one, we're not great at social media. It's just
Right.
not a skill set that we possess strongly.
And
We're
even setting
happy
aside skill set, it's a time thing.
Yeah.
exactly. And when you have no time and you're bad at a thing, you probably are going to deprioritize that thing as much as you can,
Yep.
which in turn means you don't get a lot of that. But we were very fortunate because when we started Quid Pro Roll, we already had a little bit of a baked in audience. We were
Right.
running weekly brewery games, and we would go to those games and be like, oh, and by the way, we have a podcast. So you can come and check us out even when we're not running games here. You can come and
Yeah.
listen to us running games online over at this website. And I think that helped us a ton early on.
Right.
And since then, it's been going and meeting people at conventions. And there is something magical about, we went to Queen City Anime Con last year, and there was a woman who had come up to the booth that we had set up to buy some merchandise. And she was talking about how like she really loves the cast and she's really excited for the live show we're going to do, and you know she really enjoys like these character interactions and this is one of her favorite scenes and things like that. And we're kind of standing there behind the counter and like yeah absolutely all of that's great. And then as I'm finishing up her transaction, I jumped into my Solinar voice and I was like, and hey, thanks for being a fan. And she's like, wait, you're Solinar? Oh my god. And just like
That's so cool.
I
like
had a similar thing happen to me because we were at Queen City, and it had been 2 years since the last time we were there because there wasn't one because of COVID.
Yeah.
And it was the day of the live show, I think. No, it wasn't even the day of the live show. It was like the day before. And was standing there at the booth, and some woman comes up to me and is just like, "Hey Brandon, how are you?" And I was like, "Excuse me, baking powder?" Like what? Um,
Hello.
yeah. I was like, "What?" She's like, "Oh, like we talked a couple of years ago when you guys were here, and that's what actually got me turned on to the podcast. I've been listening ever since then." I was like, well, "Holy crap!" I was like, "Well, we got a live show tomorrow." She's like, "What?"
That's so cool.
Yeah, but just like coming up to me like, "Hey," that was just wild that
That's
she
insane.
remembered that. Like, I guess listening to the podcast, she has my voice in her ear every
Right.
week, but like still remembering what I look like and everything, and coming up to look at me. Like, if you get on goblins-and-growlers.com, you can find me pretty easily. If you Google my
Right.
name, I am the first through like 20th result, so
That's
it's not
awesome.
difficult to find me. But that was just still really cool.
We had, with our first episode release, we got a little bit lucky because we released on the May Contain Action Network, which is co-founded by Trevor May, the Mets baseball player,
Mhm.
and Action Jackson, the famous Twitch streamer,
Mhm.
and they were behind it. They were retweeting it, which was really cool. And but then in addition, we got like random fan engagement. To this day, we're like on Twitter, we created a dedicated Twitter for the podcast so that we didn't like burn out our own socials. So we have @paths_forgotten on Twitter, but people are using #ForgottenPathsPod to live tweet their listen alongs. And so we have Draconix, who is coming on as a guest actually. Has live tweeted both episodes that are out so far, and just live tweeted reactions, no spoilers or anything, just like their favorite parts of the podcast. And so that's been so fun to see.
Mhm.
And go ahead.
Another thing that really helped us that we weren't expecting is, we had a pre-existing Goblins and Growlers Discord that we used for like live game organization and
Right.
everything. And, we built community on that. Well, after the podcast had been out for like a year or so, and we were getting new listeners,
Right.
people on the Discord, without any sort of prompting or encouragement from us, decided to start a weekly re-listen chat starting back over from the beginning of the podcast, which is great because it's a way for people to talk about old episodes who are like latecomers to it, for ways for people to get caught up. And it also gooses those download numbers again. So since they've done that, they've gone through the entire podcast once, and they've started just in the last few weeks. They started back. It was like right before the holiday because they took a holiday break.
7 last night.
Yeah,
as of this recording. Yeah, because I got tagged in it.
Yeah, so they've started back. So they've started back over on that again.
That's so cool. Yeah, I've recently started listening to Quid Pro Roll, and it's been so much fun to just enjoy it as a new listener. And so I'm trying to catch up to the point where I can do those listen alongs myself, because that'd just be fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. And it's always, I think if I were listening to a podcast where the cast and the production people were like involved enough to be showing up in that chat, I would think that would be really cool to have that kind of interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the biggest feedback we've gotten, is that people really like how accessible we are as people.
Yeah.
And so if you're, time is limited, but if you're running a podcast and you have the opportunity to connect with your fan base, whether it's in person at events like conventions, whether it's online on like Discord, on re-listen chats, things like that, take advantage of that, because it means a lot to people to be able to talk to the people behind what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we've kind of put into place with Forgotten Paths is, Sam and Ed and Kat as cast, along with me, monitor the hashtag Forgotten Paths pod hashtag, so we can interact with people that are tweeting about the show. And we make sure that always at least the official account interacts with them, because we love our fans. And so it's been really fun to watch that interaction grow and, to be accessible like that. I think that's something that I saw with you guys that I really admire, and I'm trying to emulate it.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. I can't think of a better way to end the podcast than that, with somebody saying a good thing about us.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, thanks guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for making time this lovely Saturday morning here.
Of course. Yeah. Saturday afternoon now.
Well, we've been at this for a while.
Exactly. But yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I truly appreciate it. If you don't mind, I'll quickly shout out, please go listen, download, not necessarily together, 5-star review, talk nice things about Forgotten Paths on any podcatcher you listen to. We are hoping that we can have a lot more fun with this thing.
Well, and there's not that many episodes out just yet, so it's a pretty easy catch-up point.
That's right. Every Monday, new episodes. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Thank you again for being on. If we come up with more either legal talk, or maybe we'll revisit talking about Forgotten Paths, some months from now, where things have changed radically for you as far as where you thought they were going and where they have gone, as I know campaigns have a tendency to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to have you back on to talk about some more stuff with us down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. And also thank you to all the listeners for putting up with these goofs, because they're pretty great.
Yeah. Well, as Noah has said, he is a cool lawyer, so it's always nice to sit down and talk to him. So thanks, everybody. I'm Brandon at Way of Brandalore on Twitter.
I'm Josh at Black Cloak DM on Twitter.
Noah, do you need to throw your stuff out there again?
Yeah, I'm at my lawyer friend on Twitter.
And TikTok. And Twitch.
I'm a cool lawyer.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Goblins and Growlers podcast. If you want to be real cool, and I mean even cooler than you are already, tell a friend about this podcast, and then have them tell a friend, and then have them tell a friend. Maybe you could share it on your social media, or lean on people to share it on their social media. That would really be swell. Everybody have a great week.